For centuries, believers have used these two phrases almost interchangeably, the rapture and the second coming. They appear connected, even inseparable, yet Scripture treats them with a precision that most people never pause to notice. The difference is not just theological, it reshapes how faith, readiness, and expectation are understood. The confusion begins because both events involve Christ, glory, and transformation. Both speak of heaven touching earth. Both carry weight, urgency, and eternal consequences, but they unfold in distinctly different ways for distinctly different purposes and to distinctly different audiences. The rapture is described quietly, sudden, intimate, almost unseen by the world. It is not announced with global judgment or public authority. Instead, it happens in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, where believers are gathered not to witness wrath, but to be removed from it. Scripture paints this event not as confrontation, but as reunion. The second coming, however, stands in stark contrast. It is public, it is unmistakable. Every eye sees, every nation is aware. Christ does not come for his people, he comes with them. Power replaces silence, authority replaces invitation. What was once hidden becomes undeniable. This is where many miss the deeper distinction. The rapture emphasizes relationship. The second coming emphasizes rule. One reflects the language of a bridegroom gathering his bride. The other reflects the language of a king reclaiming his throne. One happens in the air, the other happens on the earth. One removes believers from the world's final judgment. The other introduces judgment to a world that has rejected truth. Timing is critical here, not as speculation, but as sequence. The rapture appears without warning, without signs demanding interpretation. The second coming follows visible signs, fulfilled prophecy, and global upheaval. One interrupts history, the other concludes it. This difference changes how readiness is understood. If both were the same event, vigilance would be based on timelines. But Scripture calls believers to constant readiness, not calculation. That only makes sense if the first event arrives without announcement. This also explains why Scripture speaks differently about comfort and warning. Passages describing the rapture bring reassurance, hope, and encouragement. Passages describing the second coming bring soberness, accountability, and fear of judgment. The tone shifts because the purpose shifts. When these events are blended together, faith becomes distorted, either softened where it should be sober, or hardened where it should be hopeful. But when separated correctly, they reveal a balance between mercy and justice that runs through the entire biblical narrative. This is not about winning arguments or defending timelines. It's about understanding God's consistency. He rescues before he judges. He gathers before he reigns. He calls privately before he confronts publicly. The imagery surrounding each event reinforces this distinction. Trumpets of gathering versus trumpets of war. A meeting in the clouds versus a descent to the Mount of Olives. A transformation of believers versus a reckoning of nations. What's most striking is not how different these events are, but how intentionally they complement each other. One completes the church's journey, the other completes the world's story. And when these patterns are traced through Scripture, from prophetic shadows to explicit teachings, the clarity becomes difficult to ignore. What once felt like a single moment begins to unfold as a sequence layered with purpose, patience, and precision. Understanding this distinction doesn't answer every question, but it reframes them. It shifts the focus from fear of timing to faithfulness in living. It replaces anxiety with awareness. It turns speculation into preparation. Because when the difference is truly understood, the question no longer becomes when these events happen, but what kind of faith is being formed in the waiting, how identity is shaped in expectation, and why readiness has always mattered more than prediction. What often gets overlooked is why Scripture places so much emphasis on distinction rather than assumption. When the Bible wants two events understood as one, it speaks plainly. But when it describes the rapture and the second coming, the language, audience, and intention shift in ways that demand attention. Consider who is addressed. In passages describing the rapture, believers are spoken to directly. The message is personal. Words like comfort, hope, and encouragement appear repeatedly. There is no command to fear, no warning to hide, no instruction to endure judgment. Instead, the emphasis is on expectation, on being watchful, faithful, and spiritually awake. But when Scripture turns to the second coming, the audience broadens. Nations are addressed, kings are mentioned, armies gather. The tone becomes judicial rather than intimate. Christ is no longer described as coming like a thief in the night, but as a conquering king whose authority can no longer be ignored. This contrast matters because it reveals God's method, not just his power. The rapture reflects God's patience. The second coming reflects his justice. One removes believers before wrath unfolds. The other ends wrath by confronting rebellion. One is sudden and quiet. The other is deliberate and decisive. One is an act of rescue. The other is an act of restoration. This also explains why the early church lived with such urgency. They were not waiting for signs to align or global events to reach a climax. They lived as if Christ could come at any moment, not because they misunderstood prophecy, but because they understood the nature of the rapture. If the next event on God's timeline were a visible, sign-filled return, then readiness would depend on observation. But Scripture repeatedly calls believers to readiness without observation. That only aligns with an event that arrives without warning. The second coming, however, is anything but subtle. Prophecy surrounds it with unmistakable markers: global deception, spiritual rebellion, and open defiance against God's authority. It is not something believers stumble into unprepared. It is something the world walks toward despite repeated warnings. This distinction reshapes how faith is lived daily. The rapture invites reflection. Am I living aligned with what I claim to believe? The second coming demands accountability. What has the world done with the truth it was given? And between these two moments lies the tension Scripture constantly points toward: a world growing darker and a people called to remain light, not louder, not more fearful, but more faithful. This is why blending these events creates confusion. It turns hope into fear and judgment into speculation. But when they are seen clearly, each event fulfills its role without contradiction. The rapture completes the church's mission. The second coming completes Christ's reign. Both reveal God's character, but in different ways. One shows his mercy towards those who belong to him. The other shows his authority over those who have resisted him. And when this pattern is followed through prophecy, teaching, and symbolism, something remarkable begins to emerge. Not chaos, but coherence. Not contradiction, but continuity. A story that unfolds in order, not accident. Because the question Scripture keeps pressing is not whether these events will happen, but whether people are paying attention to what they reveal about the times, the purpose of faith, and the nature of readiness itself. When readiness is reduced to curiosity, its purpose is lost. Scripture never treats prophecy as entertainment or intellectual debate. It treats it as preparation. That is why the difference between knowing about these events and living in light of them is so important. The rapture does not call believers to panic. It calls them to perspective. Life continues. Work continues. Relationships continue. Yet beneath the surface of ordinary routines, Scripture describes a deeper awareness, an understanding that this world, as it is now, is temporary. Not meaningless, but temporary. The rapture reinforces that truth quietly, almost gently, reminding believers that their ultimate citizenship lies elsewhere. The second coming, by contrast, interrupts history itself. It does not blend into daily life, it breaks into it. Nations respond, power structures collapse, human authority is confronted by divine authority in full view. There's no ambiguity, no room for interpretation, no question of timing once it begins. This is why the Bible separates comfort from warning. Comfort is given to those who belong to Christ. Warning is given to a world that has repeatedly been offered truth and chosen something else. Mixing these messages blurs their intent and weakens both. Another overlooked detail is movement. In descriptions of the rapture, believers move upward, caught up, taken, gathered. The direction is vertical. Christ meets them in the air. There's no mention of judgment poured out, no restructuring of earthly systems. It is a transition, not a confrontation. In the second coming, by contrast, movement reverses. Christ descends fully. His feet touch the earth. Authority is established openly. Resistance is addressed directly. What was once rejected is now undeniable. These opposing directions are not symbolic coincidence. They reinforce separation of purpose. The rapture removes the church from the stage. The second coming returns Christ to center stage. Between these moments, Scripture describes a world attempting to govern itself without restraint, mistaking freedom from God for progress. It is during this time that deception grows persuasive, not because truth disappears, but because people no longer desire it. This is why readiness is not about predicting dates or decoding headlines. It is about discernment, about recognizing what aligns with truth and what merely imitates it. Believers are not told to escape responsibility because of future hope. They are told to live responsibly because of it. Faithfulness becomes the measure, not visibility, influence, or popularity. Quiet obedience matters. Integrity matters. What is done when no one is watching matters. These are the qualities Scripture highlights because they remain meaningful regardless of when events unfold. And this is where many misunderstand prophecy. They search for timelines when Scripture emphasizes transformation. They look for signs in the sky while ignoring shifts in the heart. But the Bible consistently places spiritual readiness above informational certainty. The rapture will surprise the world, but it should not surprise those who have been paying attention to how they live. The second coming will shake the world, but it will confirm what believers already know, that justice delayed is not justice denied, and truth unacknowledged does not lose its power. When these truths are held together, the message becomes clearer, not heavier. Hope does not fade, it deepens. Fear does not grow, it loses relevance. And slowly, almost unnoticed, the focus shifts from when these events happen to why they matter at all, why Scripture returns to them repeatedly, why generations before wrestled with them, and why their meaning continues to echo into every season of belief, responsibility, and expectation.
That echo is not accidental. Biblical prophecy was never meant to sit quietly in the background of faith. It was designed to shape how belief is lived out in real time, not by creating urgency rooted in fear, but by grounding daily choices in eternal perspective. When early believers spoke about the return of Christ, they did not withdraw from society. They engaged it more deeply. They worked honestly, loved sacrificially, endured patiently. Their expectation of what was coming did not make life smaller, it made it more meaningful. This is often missed in modern conversations. The rapture is sometimes framed as an escape, but Scripture frames it as completion, a gathering, not a disappearance, the fulfillment of a relationship that began with grace and continues through faith. It is the natural conclusion of belonging, not a sudden abandonment of responsibility. Likewise, the second coming is not portrayed as a sudden loss of control for humanity, but as the restoration of rightful order, the return of authority to where it always belonged. What seems disruptive is only disruptive because the world has grown accustomed to operating without accountability. Another important distinction lies in awareness. The rapture arrives without global recognition. It is personal, intimate, immediate. Its impact is felt deeply, but not universally understood at first. Confusion follows, explanations are attempted, alternatives are offered. Humanity fills the silence with speculation. The second coming leaves no silence to fill. Every description points to clarity, visibility, recognition, acknowledgement. What was once debated becomes undeniable. What was once optional becomes unavoidable. The difference is not merely theological, it is experiential. This contrast reinforces a pattern seen throughout Scripture. God first invites, then intervenes. Invitation respects choice. Intervention ends debate. The present moment, this space between promise and fulfillment, is defined by invitation. Belief is offered, not imposed. Truth is available, not enforced. And because of that, faith carries weight. It costs something. It reflects trust rather than compliance. That is why Scripture places so much emphasis on watchfulness, not watchfulness rooted in anxiety, but attentiveness shaped by alignment. A life oriented toward truth naturally remains alert, not scanning the horizon in panic, but grounded enough to recognize what matters. This is also why moral clarity becomes more challenging as history progresses, not because truth becomes complex, but because distractions become convincing. Comfort replaces conviction, noise replaces discernment, and slowly the essential becomes optional. Yet Scripture never suggests that darkness overwhelms light, only that light must be chosen. The promise of what lies ahead is not meant to pull believers out of the world prematurely. It is meant to anchor them within it, steady, consistent, unmoved by shifting narratives or temporary power structures. And as these ideas settle, not rushed, not forced, the question quietly shifts again, away from events, away from timelines, away from speculation, towards something far more personal, far more enduring, and far more revealing about what readiness truly looks like when belief meets everyday life.
That shift from curiosity about events to reflection on personal readiness is where the message has always been pointing, not toward charts or dates, but toward posture. Scripture repeatedly emphasizes who a person is becoming, not how much information they can collect. Readiness, in the biblical sense, is not about predicting the moment. It is about alignment long before the moment arrives. This is why Jesus often spoke in parables when addressing the future, not to hide truth, but to reveal priorities. The wise and foolish virgins were not separated by knowledge of timing, but by preparation. The servants were not judged by awareness of the master's return, but by faithfulness during the delay. Delay itself is part of the design. What feels like waiting is actually a test of consistency. Can belief remain steady when nothing dramatic happens? Can conviction survive routine? Can hope stay alive when days look ordinary? In many ways, that is the real tension of the present age. The world is not collapsing all at once. It is drifting, slowly, subtly. And drift is harder to notice than destruction. It happens quietly, through small compromises, softened language, blurred lines. Rarely through outright rebellion, more often through gradual indifference. This is why watchfulness is inward before it is outward. A watchful life pays attention to what shapes its desires, what dulls sensitivity, what replaces awe with familiarity. Over time, even sacred truths can become background noise if they are not actively lived. The early church understood this. Their hope in Christ's return did not produce passivity, it produced resilience. They expected hardship, not comfort. They anticipated opposition, not applause. And because of that, they were not surprised when faith carried a cost. Modern faith often struggles here. Expectation has been redefined as entitlement. Blessing is assumed. Difficulty feels like a disruption rather than a refining process. Yet Scripture consistently presents endurance as evidence of authenticity. This does not mean fear should drive belief. Fear immobilizes. Hope mobilizes. The promise of being gathered to Christ was meant to steady hearts, not disturb them, to free believers from desperation, not trap them in speculation. Confidence in what is coming allows people to live generously now, without clinging to what cannot last. And that is where the distinction between the rapture and the second coming becomes more than theological nuance. It becomes a lens for understanding time itself. One moment emphasizes relationship, the other emphasizes restoration. One speaks to belonging, the other speaks to authority. Together, they form a complete picture of how history moves, not randomly, not endlessly, but purposefully. Nothing is wasted, nothing is forgotten, nothing is unresolved. Even what seems delayed is being held. And as that realization settles, it begins to reshape how everyday decisions are made, how priorities are ordered, how identity is defined, how truth is weighed against convenience, quietly, steadily, without announcement, continuing exactly where belief meets the ordinary rhythm of life.
When belief settles into daily rhythm, it stops being reactive and starts becoming formative. It shapes how silence is handled, how pressure is processed, how disappointment is interpreted. Faith is no longer something activated only in crisis. It becomes the lens through which everything else is seen. This is why Scripture repeatedly warns against spiritual drowsiness, not because danger is always visible, but because comfort can be deceptive. Comfort convinces people that nothing urgent is happening, that everything important can wait, that tomorrow will look like today. Yet biblical history shows that decisive moments rarely announce themselves loudly. They arrive during normal routines, fields being worked, meals being prepared, plans being made. Life continues right up until it doesn't. That reality isn't meant to create anxiety, it's meant to cultivate awareness. Awareness that time is meaningful, that choices echo beyond the moment they are made, that character is being shaped even when no one is watching. Jesus never instructed his followers to withdraw from the world while waiting. He instructed them to engage it wisely, to live fully without living loosely, to be present without being absorbed. That balance is difficult, which is why it requires intention. Intention keeps belief from becoming passive tradition. Without intention, faith slowly shifts from conviction to culture. Words are repeated, symbols are preserved, but transformation stalls. Familiarity replaces reverence. Truth becomes information instead of foundation. And that is where the real danger lies, not in disbelief, but in distraction. Distraction fragments focus, it divides loyalty, it fills time while emptying depth. Over time, it numbs discernment until spiritual urgency feels extreme and complacency feels normal. Yet throughout Scripture, God's pattern has always been consistent. He works through remnants, not majorities, through those willing to remain attentive when others drift, through those who listen closely rather than loudly. Preparation, then, is not dramatic, it is deliberate. It shows up in quiet obedience, in integrity when compromise would be easier, in patience when outcomes are delayed, in trust when explanations are incomplete. These moments rarely feel significant while they are happening, yet they accumulate weight over time. This is why readiness cannot be rushed at the last moment. It is built gradually, choice by choice, posture by posture. Oil is gathered before midnight, not after the announcement. And as the world grows louder, faster, and more divided, that steady posture becomes increasingly distinct. Not aggressive, not fearful, just anchored. Anchored people move differently. They respond rather than react. They evaluate rather than echo. They are less shaken by uncertainty because their foundation does not depend on circumstances aligning. That kind of stability stands out not through spectacle, but through consistency, quietly continuing forward, shaping perspective, influencing direction, holding tension without resolution, carrying meaning without conclusion, moving in the same uninterrupted current where awareness deepens and purpose continues to unfold.
What often goes unnoticed is how subtly alignment drifts, not through sudden rebellion, but through small accommodations. Priorities rearrange themselves quietly. What once required discipline begins to feel optional. What once felt sacred becomes negotiable. And no single step feels significant enough to resist. That's the danger of gradual distance. It never announces itself as departure. It presents itself as adjustment, adaptation, balance. Yet over time, the center shifts, and what was once peripheral now occupies the core. Scripture doesn't describe readiness as perfection. It describes it as watchfulness, a posture of attention, an inward orientation that remains sensitive even when surroundings become noisy. Watchfulness is not suspicion, it is clarity. Clarity allows people to recognize moments for what they are. Moments of decision rarely come labeled as such. They look like ordinary opportunities, common conversations, familiar temptations, repeated patterns. The difference is not in the moment itself, but in the awareness brought into it. Those who are attentive notice when something feels slightly misaligned, when a compromise seems small but persistent, when a habit dulls rather than strengthens. These signals are easy to ignore, especially when life appears stable on the surface. But stability can coexist with erosion. This is why inner formation matters more than outward appearance. External structure may hold for a while, but without internal grounding, pressure eventually exposes fractures. Belief that is inherited but not examined becomes fragile. Faith that is borrowed but not internalized struggles under weight. Depth develops slowly. It grows through reflection, not reaction, through consistency, not intensity, through remaining rooted when novelty fades. That process isn't visible. There are no immediate markers of progress, no applause, no dramatic confirmation, just the quiet accumulation of resilience, discernment, and perspective over time. Perspective changes how waiting is experienced. Waiting is no longer passive delay, it becomes active trust, a recognition that preparation itself is participation, that unseen growth is still growth, that nothing invested in alignment is wasted. In this space, urgency and patience coexist. Urgency without panic, patience without apathy, movement without haste, stillness without stagnation. And as that balance settles, something shifts internally. Fear loses influence, comparison fades, the need for constant reassurance diminishes. Confidence no longer depends on outcomes, but on orientation. Orientation shapes response. When unexpected events arise, response flows from foundation rather than emotion. When uncertainty increases, grounding becomes more evident. When others rush toward noise, anchored minds remain steady, continuing forward in the same measured rhythm, holding attention on what endures, staying aligned within the same unfolding current, where awareness remains active, intention remains engaged, and the path continues without interruption.
Underneath that steadiness, something deeper is forming, an awareness that doesn't rely on constant signals or dramatic signs. It's a recognition that meaning is often revealed through consistency rather than shock, through repetition rather than surprise. People often expect transformation to feel loud, but most real change happens quietly, almost invisibly, while attention is fixed elsewhere. It takes shape in the choices made when no one is watching, in the restraint shown when reaction would be easier, in the discipline to remain aligned even when distraction feels more rewarding. Distraction doesn't always come as chaos. Sometimes it arrives as comfort. Comfort convinces the mind that vigilance is no longer necessary, that the work is finished, that awareness can relax without consequence. But awareness, once loosened, is difficult to restore quickly. It requires intention to sharpen again, and intention requires clarity. Clarity comes from remembering what actually matters, not what trends, not what feels urgent in the moment, but what remains true regardless of circumstances. Truth that doesn't shift with mood or environment. Principles that hold even when convenience argues otherwise. Those principles act like an internal compass. They don't force movement, but they provide direction. And direction, once known, simplifies decisions. Complexity fades when orientation is clear. This is why repetition is powerful. Returning again and again to the same grounding truths strengthens familiarity. Familiarity removes confusion. Confusion is often what leads people astray, not rebellion, but uncertainty. Uncertainty invites substitutes. When depth feels demanding, surface-level answers appear attractive. When patience feels slow, shortcuts promise speed. When reflection feels uncomfortable, noise offers relief. But substitutes never satisfy for long. They require constant replacement, constant escalation. Depth, on the other hand, sustains. It doesn't need constant reinforcement. It grows stronger through endurance, through time spent rather than time saved, through presence rather than performance. Presence changes how moments are perceived. Ordinary interactions begin to carry weight. Small decisions feel connected to something larger. Even silence becomes instructive rather than empty. In that space, awareness expands naturally. There's no pressure to anticipate everything, only to remain attentive. No demand to control outcomes, only to stay aligned with intention. The focus shifts from prediction to preparation, from anxiety to attentiveness. And as attentiveness deepens, patterns become clearer. Not all at once, but gradually. Threads begin to connect. Events that once seemed random start to feel meaningful, not because they are dramatic, but because they are consistent with the same underlying movement, continuing forward without pause, without resolution, without signaling a break, simply unfolding along the same steady line of awareness where attention remains fixed and the progression continues uninterrupted.
That uninterrupted movement eventually reaches a point where awareness no longer feels like effort. It becomes instinct. The mind stops fighting for focus because focus has already settled into place. What once required reminders now happens naturally, like balance learned through repetition rather than instruction. At this stage, the outside world hasn't changed much, but perception has. The same situations appear, the same choices arise, yet responses are different, not reactive, not rushed. There's a pause now, brief but powerful, where intention steps in before impulse. And in that pause, freedom exists. Freedom from being pulled in every direction, freedom from unnecessary weight. This is where many misunderstand progress.
They look for visible markers, applause, recognition, confirmation. But the most important shift is internal. It's the quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself, the calm certainty that doesn't depend on approval. Certainty doesn't mean knowing everything. It means trusting alignment even without full visibility. There will always be unknowns ahead. That's unavoidable. But when alignment is strong, uncertainty loses its threat. It becomes part of the process rather than an obstacle. Movement continues, not blindly, but faithfully, step by step, grounded in what has already been understood. And with that understanding comes responsibility. Awareness isn't just for observation, it shapes action. It influences how time is spent, how words are chosen, how silence is respected. It refines priorities without force. Certain things naturally fall away, not because they're forbidden, but because they no longer fit. What remains is simpler, clearer, lighter. This simplicity creates space, space to notice, space to grow, space to remain steady even when external pressure increases. Stability stops being something chased and starts being something carried. Carried quietly, consistently. There's no dramatic conclusion to this progression, no sudden signal that says this is the end, because awareness isn't a destination, it's a state that continues as long as attention is nurtured. It moves forward through every ordinary moment, every choice made with intention, every pause taken with clarity. And in that continuation, without noise or interruption, the journey completes itself, not by stopping, but by becoming whole.